Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elaine Fagan with Insurance Agents and Brokers, and I want to welcome everyone to today's Women-Focused webinar, Candid Conversation, Alcohol and the Insurance Industry. I know that for us, we're just thrilled that we have women from I, A, and B and our sister associations across the country joining us for the presentation today. And we're really excited that we're focusing on an issue we've never addressed before. And I think kudos to us for thinking outside the box on this one. Because when we really think about it, alcohol does remain a key element of social and networking events. And today, for lots of different reasons, people are reevaluating their relationship with it. And in response to this changing view, today's presentation is designed as an interactive conversation between those that are joining us and with Meg McKeen, our presenter, so that we can unpack the role it plays in our industry and the challenges that can be faced with it as it connects and concerns our professional and our personal relationships, and especially how it affects those relationships if we're adopting a new approach to alcohol, whether you're choosing to abstain from it or reduce your consumption or just take a healthier approach to it, whatever it might be, it may have an impact on how things go with how you interact with others. So before I introduce today's speaker, I do have 4 really brief housekeeping details. The first one, and for any of you that are returning attendees, you'll know all these details, but we still need to go over them. All audio lines are muted and cameras are off. But as the conversation continues, Meg will take questions using the raise your hand feature. And as the webinar administrator, I will unmute your audio for you to comment as appropriate during the conversation and during the presentation. If you have the second detail is if you have questions or comments and you don't want to voice them via the raise your hand option, just post it in the chat. The chat is available to everyone, and Meg and others can respond as they like, because again, it's open to all of us, and that way we get to see what we're all thinking and sharing with one another. Third, the webinar is being recorded and it should be accessible to you via your association's website. And the fourth and final item is our women-focused webinar series will continue in 2026. We're very excited about that. And so just keep an eye out for promotion on the new topics that are being selected. We hope to have the promotion underway in late 2025, definitely in early 2026. And the goal would be to have as many repeat customers as possible, and then have those repeat customers invite other women to join us so that we expand our audience and let more people in on all this good stuff. So that is it for housekeeping details. And now on to the speaker introduction for the day. Since IANB's 2025 that came out kind of funny, Women's Conference, Meg McKeen has become a familiar face to many of you. We have loved working with her, and she has brought an abundance of knowledge to our women's initiative. And we love that she brings personal experience, professional experience, and exposure to the insurance industry to the table and can talk to us all about and she can just relate to the things that we are all doing in the world of insurance. And she has been in the insurance industry for a while, I would say. She started out as an underwriter, an agent, and now she is the founder and principal and professional development, the founder of the personal and professional development organization that we know as Adjunct Advisors. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing in the background and it distracted me and I lost my spot. So she heads up Adjunct Advisors, which is the development organization focused on encouraging and inspiring women in our industry. And she also I can't speak today, ladies, hosts the Bound and Determined podcast, which offers women a space to tell their stories and support one another. And the focus is all on women in our industry. So if you haven't checked out the podcast, I would encourage you to do so. So we are just so grateful for the relationship that we have established with Meg, and that she is here today to share her expertise and experience with all of you. So with that said, I'm finished stumbling over my words, and I am going to pass the mic to Meg. It's all you,
Oh,
Meg.
thank you.
You
Thank you,
got it.
Elaine. And thanks for keeping it real. If that
Yeah.
isn't the tone that I hope that we can take over the next hour together, I don't know what is. This is absolutely a conversation. I have ideas, I have things that I want to share that I hope to share, but I do want this to be a two-way or multi-way conversation. And so it might feel a little bit different if you find yourself clicking away and multitasking in the background. I just invite you to come hang out with us for the next little bit. And whether your relationship with alcohol is solid, whether it's in question, whether it's something you've never thought about or you're thinking about on behalf of someone else, we're all here for different reasons. And all of those reasons are the right reasons. And that's something that when we get started here, I really want to highlight for us, if you've seen me present before, either in person at the Women's Conference last year or on another webinar, I've shared this slide before, and it's really important to me that we remember to frame this conversation through our own experience and also hold space for others' experiences too, which are likely very, very different than ours, informed by different cultural elements, different upbringing, different choices that we've made over the years. And it's really important when we think about a topic like this, and it is brave, Elaine, when you talked about that. This isn't, this is kind of like staring the elephant in the room in the face in many ways, because alcohol permeates our culture, our society, and also our industry. And for many of us, it's been present in most, if not all, of our professional lives and even our personal lives to some degree. And with that comes a lot of feeling. And so I welcome you to explore that here. And also remember that the choices that you make for yourself may not be the right ones for anybody else, and that's okay. You're allowed to do what's right for you. And we're also going to talk about some ways that we can be supportive of other people who might be struggling. And I would be totally remiss if I didn't share, this is a conversation. It is high level, it is neutralized to a certain degree, but alcohol abuse and alcohol addiction is a real thing for many of us. And it's rampant in my family. It's present for some of my dearest friends right now. And just a reminder that there are resources that are available if you or someone that you love is struggling right now. And that information is here on the screen. Easy to find, easy to access, but I do know that that first step can be the hardest. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Today, we're going to spend the next little bit weaving our way through some different topics, some different ideas that I have for us to think about and to interact with. And we will be talking about alcohol in the insurance industry. Let's level set. Let's talk about what it looks like, how it's showing up for you in the environment, the culture that you're working in. And then what happens if we decide that maybe we want to take a different approach, and maybe we're very early in our careers, maybe we're at a different place in our careers, but for a lot of reasons, we decide that maybe alcohol doesn't fit in the way that it has fit in the past. What can come up for us? There's a lot of things, spoiler alert, that can come up for us. And then we're going to talk about the upside. For a lot of us, stopping consumption of alcohol can feel like a loss, but it can also open up space for a lot of really wonderful change in our lives. And that's not easy. And I want to really honor that experience for all of us. And before we jump in, I do want to set the stage. If you've been with us for a webinar in the past, thank you for being there. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being interested in a topic like this. I've shared sound bites about my own story on social media, on the podcast that I host. It does come up when I speak publicly because woven into a topic like risk taking or navigating change and dealing with difficult situations is a topic like alcohol, because we all have feelings about it and we all have opinions and experience with it. And I just shared a post on LinkedIn. Maybe you saw it. Maybe it's what brought you here, but I shared yesterday morning, very candidly, as I do, that my first drink, if you will, was I was 16 years old. My friend Mike's parents were out of town and we made screwdrivers in his parents' basement. And I thought it was disgusting and I drank it anyway. And that's a nice little metaphor for the relationship that alcohol had in my life. I drank to fit in. I drank for the belonging. I drank to make everybody else more comfortable for a long, long time. And it was about 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in December, that I decided to make a different choice for myself. Again, not the right choice for everyone. But for me, it started with a 30-day experiment. What would happen if I eliminated alcohol from my life? What could change? And after 30 days, I realized that maybe I was onto something here, and we can get into what that looks like. But for me, it was something I did quietly. I didn't broadcast it to the universe. I didn't tell my close friends or my family that I was experimenting with it because I wasn't sure that it was a forever decision for me. And I believe it's a forever decision for me, but we're always subject to change. And I want to honor that too. Got a lot of really lovely feedback after I shared that post yesterday. A lot of it public in the comments, but also a lot of private direct messages as well. And just to reiterate, we're all at a different place on our journey. So this is where I'm going to ask you to join me in the conversation. I want to talk about alcohol at work and how it's showing up for us, and share with you. I did a little bit of research. I'm not super data nerdy. No judgment if you are, but I did want to understand what's going on here. We live in a society that is very alcohol focused. We work in an industry that is very alcohol focused. And what's going on here? What is this all about? And I found this interesting little tidbit here that research shows, and this was done by an organization called PubMed, that alcohol facilitates social bonding in group settings, including in professional or white-collar contexts. For example, moderate alcohol consumption increased self-reported bonding and positive group interaction among social drinkers in a lab study of groups of strangers. And so this really validates what I think a lot of us already know to be true. Drinking is a very social experience for many of us. And so it makes sense then that we would find ourselves doing happy hours, whether it's with colleagues or clients, teammates, and why other social events might center around alcohol or have a component that includes alcohol. And I'm curious if you'll join me in the chat. Let's get our fingers moving. I see several of you. Molly, hi. Catherine, good to see you. Emily, thanks for being here. But let's talk a little bit about where alcohol is showing up in your work experience. And I'm thinking back to anybody who's been in the industry for a long time, the old 2 or 3 martini lunches. I don't know that that's happening as often as they were kind of back in the day, but you would hear these stories about all sorts of business deals getting done during these very boozy lunches. And that's a real part of the culture and the tradition in our industry. Golf outings are another. There's often a beverage cart that's circulating. And it's flowing, it's ready, it's available for you. Marley, thank you. Networking happy hours, team happy hours, golfing, discussions about weekend plans with coworkers, happy hours, golfing, not during lunch ever, just happy hours, carrier events, golf outings, right? My goodness, hospitality suites. Yeah, conventions where each insurance company had a hospitality room that stayed open to the wee hours, after hours. Yeah, this is real. This is real. Holiday parties, we're in it, right? 'Tis the season. We're in the last quarter of the year. We're knocking on 1/1s for those of us that speak that language, and things are going to get extra busy, right? We're wrapping up those year-end renewals, but holiday parties and holiday festivities are in full swing. Every conference, office holiday parties, right? And so it is very present. And I do want to honor there's a shift that's happening, and we're going to talk a lot more about this here, a generational shift. And those of you that were with us in Pennsylvania for the Young Agent Conference just a couple weeks ago, we talked about this generational shift. And Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as they come into the workforce, less interested in alcohol. And there's some reasons for that. They are typically leaning towards other substances, cannabis, THC, but also less social in the sense that they feel the need to be everywhere and to be included. No shame, no judgment if we feel that way. But generations coming in are looking for social connection in different ways and don't necessarily lend themselves to the bar or the after hours energy. So there is a shift here, but we still have 5 generations in the workplace. And so we've got a lot of different approaches and a lot of different opinions here. Molly, thanks for jumping in on the fundraiser prize baskets. And I appreciate that we're going deeper here because that's where I found my greatest friction points. I remember I was a carrier rep for a long, long time. I was a field underwriter, and I remember an agent that I just adored and really enjoyed working with was awarded the company trip. He had sold a lot of insurance, and so he got to go to Italy with the carrier that I worked for that year. And he brought me back a beautiful bottle of limoncello. And I I drank it, right? But I wonder now, looking back, how would I have felt if I had received that gift? Whether he knew that I drank or didn't drink, did that really hit the mark or did that miss the mark? Again, no shame, no judgment, but thinking about the decisions that we're making for ourselves may not be the decisions that others would be making for themselves. And a little more darker, maybe. Similar social gathering, we've talked about after hours. And I remember feeling like if I left the bar while everybody else was still at the bar, was I going to miss out? And was I going to be judged? And would a judgment be made about me and my level of participation? Back to that post I shared just yesterday, a gentleman chimed in that he was deemed not a cultural fit about a week after he was encouraged to start drinking club soda with a lime wedge to give the impression that he was participating in the drinking culture in his organization. And this is real. This isn't, for many of us, this is embedded, deeply embedded in our office culture. And so the thought of showing up differently, particularly if we've been showing up one way, change can be really hard for us to navigate and also for the people around us to really absorb. So what's been interesting to me, and part of this is like no surprise, right? Because these are the things that I talk about. I love the mess of it all. And so I'm much more likely to be talking about feelings than I am something very concrete and very technical in our industry. But more and more women raise their hands and say, something's not right here. And yeah, I'm drinking and I'm participating and I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do, but something's not clicking for me here. And this is exactly where I found myself. And after I did a ton of research, because I nerd out on podcasts and things like that, I discovered a term that was new for me at the time and has become so significant for me when I talk about this topic, is that many of us are living in the gray area. So this was a survey done by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism just last year. And this was a theoretical survey of the entire population. And if you want to go online and look at this data, it's fascinating. There's a ton of different dissections of the information. But when we look specifically at women, we see that 65.4% of women over the age of 18 drank in the past year, and 4% of women identify as having an alcohol dependency or a reliance on alcohol. And so there's this fascinating swath of people in between 65 to 4 that are somewhere in the middle and are somewhere I drink, I partake, I participate, but I don't necessarily have a problem. And that's where I always got stuck. Um, Again, back to this concept of the gray area. I would go out to dinner with my girlfriends to celebrate a promotion. And of course, I would order a glass of wine. I would gather with my family for the Christmas holiday. That's what we celebrate. And my aunt would bring a bottle of wine. And of course, I would say yes when it came time to pour. Are you kidding me? I would never consider going to a wedding and not participating in the champagne toast. I've had a really hard day. Therefore, I have earned that glass of wine at the end of it. And I was showing up. I was doing all of the things. I was showing up for meetings. I was being present and I was being accountable and I was doing all the things that were expected of me. And yet I found myself questioning like what is going on here? What am I doing? Where is alcohol fitting? Is this helping me or is this hurting me in the long run? And what I hear from a lot of us as we dive into this topic is that a lot of us are negotiating with ourselves. We've created almost like rules for our like, okay, I'm only going to drink on weekends. I'm only going to drink when I'm outside of the house. I'm only going to drink if I'm around other people. I'm only going to drink one glass of wine. I won't finish an entire bottle during the week. All sorts of stipulations and rules that we're creating for ourselves. And all of this feeling like I don't have a problem because unfortunately in our society and in our culture, you either have a problem or you don't. And it's possible that you can make a decision to stop drinking and not be a full-blown addict, if you will. And we like labels, right? Are you sober if you just stopped drinking but didn't have a dependency, or are you sober only if you identify as an alcoholic and stop drinking? And I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately. I find myself using the word sober because it really helps me to identify where I want to be in this community. I know that this is the right decision for me. And so that's the place that I speak from, and less concerned about maybe what that impact might be on other people when I use that language. But it's real. And so labels do come up. And then, this idea, it's not a problem necessarily, but it's also not helping me. And this is the place that I arrived. I'm 47 now, so this was 3 years ago, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was at the very beginning of my perimenopause journey, which I'm still on. And shout out to anybody else that's on it with me. This is quite a ride, but I noticed that my anxiety was just through the roof, and really decided kind of once and for all that I wanted to get to the bottom of this and I wanted to understand. And I was working with my therapist, who I've had a long-term relationship with, and was doing talk therapy and exercise and, diet, sort of all the things I knew how to do. And I discovered a book, and I'll share it with you. Um, I've got some resources for you here at the end of our session, called The Anatomy of Anxiety. And it was in Dr. Ellen Vora's words that I really understood that alcohol is affecting my nervous system. And so that's where the 30-day challenge came from. I thought, what if I just didn't for 30 days, and what could happen? And so there were plenty of upsides, but I did notice personally for me, with zero scientific proof, that I did feel like my anxiety was curbed a little bit. And so for me, that helped me to validate that this felt like a good decision for me. So I'm going to pause, and I'd like y'all have been so communicative here in the chat, but this gray area, do you find yourself just sort of going through the motions? Do you relate here to the things that we're talking about? What do you think? I'd love to know your thoughts here in the chat, and I'll pause while y'all catch up with me. And maybe you're figuring it out, but also maybe you've made the decision to stop drinking in the gray areas where you found yourself, like not necessarily with a problem, but also not feeling like there was a huge upside for you either. Just curious what you think. Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Anxiety after drinking, feeling pressured by peers at times when I don't want to drink. Yep, I relate to that. COVID drinking was too much and dialed back. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We were all experiencing something different during COVID, but I was living in, and we just changed the time back here. And so it was very similar time of year for me, and it was dark. I remember the sun would set at 4:30 and I'd get on happy hour with my girlfriends over Zoom and have a couple glasses of wine, and I would shut the computer down and I would just feel this wash of loneliness. I was single at the time and living alone, and those were hard days on a lot of levels. But Jean, thanks for adding in drinking rules, not a problem, not a solution, all rang true. Yeah, all areas are relatable. Thank you for that, Molly. Making rules on types of alcohol I would consume, right? We've all heard the beer before liquor, never been sicker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. It's wild, right? I don't know that that's accurate or not, but I've said that to myself more than once as I was making, choosing my strategy for the day. And I have to reiterate, no shame, no judgment. We are all in a different place on our journey. And I'm in the place that I have landed, and I know that it's the right one for me. But had I sat and listened to this conversation when I was in the midst of day drinking with my girlfriends and living my best life post divorce, I probably wouldn't have wanted to hear it. And so I honor that too. It's got to be the right time, if ever, for us to want to have a conversation like this. Donna, thank you for adding a layer on stress relief there. So here's what's interesting. These days, and this is research done by Circana, they're oh, what am I trying to say? Brain fog, like a consumer research firm that nearly 1 in 2 Americans are trying to drink less in 2025. And it's a huge increase, 44% since 2023. And so I think that highlights and echoes the comment maybe about COVID, but I love the emphasis on trying because for a lot of folks, it's not an either or, it's not an all or nothing, it's not black and white. And so there's a lot of things that come up for us when we think about what changing this relationship could look like. And that's where we're going to go. We're going to go next. Kristen, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you found us. Kristen lives alcohol free because it no longer serves her purpose, her connection to her higher power, her productivity, mental stress, anxiety after menopause and studying sleep. Yeah, mind, body biohacking. It was voiding all of those efforts. Yeah. The more you learn, right? When you know more, you can know better, you can do better. There is a lot of research, there's a lot of evidence. And there's also evidence to the contrary. We're constantly being bombarded with a glass of wine a day is a good thing. A glass of wine a day is a terrible thing. You have to decide what's right for you. I knew for me, sleep is a huge priority. I got a lot of factors working against me. And so the idea that my sleep would be interrupted or that at 47, I just don't recover the way that I did in my 20s or even my 30s. A poor night of sleep, for whatever reason, really knocks me down for quite a while. And so that was the consideration for me. And Kristen, I appreciate you bringing that up. So let's talk about what gets in the way. So we're thinking about making a different choice for ourselves, and whatever the motivator is, maybe you want to sleep better. Maybe you want to look better. Maybe you want to feel better. Maybe you want to feel more confident. Maybe you're tired of kind of going with the flow, and you want to exercise your own independence in this way. These are things that came up for me. They come up for the women that I've spoken with about this topic. And the first one we'll talk about is perception changes. And so, does anybody out there identify as the life of the party, or maybe always on, always funny, always engaging, the one that rallies the troops, that brings everybody together? That certainly wasn't me, but I definitely had a drinking persona. And one of the things that can happen when we decide to change that persona is the way that people see us can change. And so one of the things that has come up is this idea of like, are we even fun if we don't have a drink in our hands? If we don't go watch Sunday football at our favorite corner pub, um, are we even fun anymore? And the short answer to that is yes, we are fun. And the longer answer to that is it may change the way that people see you. And one of the things that I didn't expect that wasn't necessarily a good thing in the moment because there was a lot of pain associated with it, but is that my friendships changed. And the people that wanted to sort of rally around in celebration and in partaking in that way wanted to do that with other people that were as well. And so my choice to abstain or to not participate did change the way that they saw me in their eyes. And I had to deal with, the consequence of that. And in many ways, grieving long-term friendships and lots of shared memories, but also really doubling down that I knew that I wanted to go sit with a friend over coffee, maybe instead of being at a loud, crowded restaurant. I don't know about y'all, but I have no tolerance for for noise or loud spaces anymore. I don't know if that's a midlife thing or just life in general, but I loud, crowded spaces just are not my favorite anymore. And so but I want to remember the conversation. As you already saw, I've got some brain fog stuff going on. I've got a deficit to begin with, but I want to be present and I want to know that the things that are coming out of my mouth are directly linked to my heart and to my brain. And I want to be in conversation and I want to have a good recollection that I was showing up for people in that way. And it doesn't mean that you can't have that when alcohol's involved. For me, I knew it was a challenge. It was always going to be an uphill battle. And when I think about the anxiety that I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of ruminating after a night of drinking. The next day, there was a lot of self-loathing. There was a lot of doubt. What did I say? Did I put my foot in my mouth? Did I offend someone? I can't believe I said that. Did that person overhear what I didn't mean for them to hear? The paranoia was pretty real for me. And also to add, I was not really good at having one drink and being done. And so once I hit two, two would become four, and then in many ways the wheels would come off. I mentioned this yesterday in my post. No real consequences, though, to be honest. There are a lot of ways that my life could have gone a different direction, and luck and timing and maybe I was more together than I thought that I was, but those things weren't part of my story. And so it was easy to perpetuate that for a long, long time. Molly's got a great comment here. Finding out who I was without alcohol was a process. She had to grieve her party girl alter ego, but after a while was happy to let that go and find space for who I wanted to become. Giving up alcohol gave you that opportunity. Yeah, it's a huge risk. It is a huge risk to sunset a part of who we've been for a very long time and a part of the way people see us, frankly, out there in the world for an unknown, right? You don't know. You don't know what's going to be under the surface when you do that digging. But I appreciate you sharing. Um, Jean, yes, so many of the fun events revolve around alcohol. When I quit for a while, I found I didn't enjoy some of those events as much as but found myself isolated. I'm an introvert and really struggle at work events where I don't know many people if I don't have a drink. Yeah. Couple thoughts there for you. And I do appreciate you all chiming in here. I wish you were up here next to me and that we were doing this in person, but I'll take what I can get. I agree with you. I love live music and I find myself going to far fewer shows because there is a social component to concerts. And again, part of it too is, being out late and the noise and the crowd. And it's just not my favorite thing these days. And also identify as an introvert, believe it or not. I'm a public speaker. I do this for a living, but yet once I finish a session like this, I kind of crawl back into my cave to recharge and to replenish. And so I feel that too. I don't love, I have a lot of social anxiety as well. And so walking into a happy hour and not knowing anyone and trying to break into a conversation, I get it. I don't like that feeling in my belly when that comes up. And the the drink component is interesting because a lot of us are seeing more mocktails out there that are available. Rarely are people asking me what's in my glass. It's usually a club soda or a LaCroix. Frankly, maybe nothing. I have a limit of water too, right? That I want to drink in a day. And so often I'm just standing there and then there's nothing in my hand. And sometimes that sparks conversation and sometimes it doesn't. And that's that. So appreciate you adding to the conversation here in the chat. Leading us to, I think that's a good one. The awkward moments, right? Like this came up when I went through a 30-day dry January several years ago with the help of my sobriety coach. And somebody popped in and it was a group environment. It was like, I don't even know what to do with my hands anymore. Do I put them in my pockets? If I fold my arms over my chest, I look unapproachable. And so the drink in your hand just gives you something to do or the perception of something to do. And so a couple schools of thought, right? Put something in your hand that isn't alcohol or learn to be okay with the awkward. And I think that's the lesson that I needed to learn was this has quite a bit to do with alcohol, but this also has to do with me physically taking up the space that I am taking up and really owning and honoring that space and what I need in that space. And those were the lessons that I didn't see coming. Um, Missed opportunities. This is real. And to be honest, when I talk about this with our male counterparts, this comes up a lot more often. Not that it's not coming up for us as well, but it is interesting because there is very much that sort of old boy network in our industry. And so if you are going to the golf outing, and we all know how much business is happening on the golf course, and you're not participating, it's even been questioned, are you trustworthy? And we could go on for days about trustworthiness, but it's interesting how many layers and how much impact that can have for someone when your effectiveness is called into question. And so there are absolutely opportunities that we are not part of if we are not closing down the bar at 4 a.m. And there are consequences, right? There are consequences to choosing to drink, and there are consequences to choosing to abstain. And that's one of those things that I can't answer for any of us. And I am still figuring it out for myself. I don't know necessarily what opportunities I've missed because I'm not there. I'm not there. And so maybe there's, judgment and whispering behind my back. I don't know, but I do know that I feel really good about the decisions that I'm making today. And so this is tricky. It's messy and sticky for a lot of us. Exclusions, flat out. I remember I used to travel with my girlfriends regularly. We had all sorts of wild adventures together. I don't travel with them anymore. And it's not excluded in a mean way. It's excluded that we don't have this thing in common anymore. And it's really sunset some of those relationships for me. And sometimes that is a consequence of making a choice like this. The chat is hopping. Y'all are amazing. Emily's sharing almost allergic to alcohol in the last couple of years. Has to explain herself at events. Seems to avoid the events or not stay as long. Yeah. Molly's local chamber has got some events like e-bike tours, craft nights, kayaking, signing up for those. Suggestions and comment cards to encourage events where there isn't even a bar, connecting in nature, creative, right? We have so much opportunity for creativity in our industry. And I love this. Molly's kind of call to action. Highly encourage you to suggest to your employer, company, or chamber implementing some of these fun ideas for networking. Drinking over indulging has become a focus. Yes, Catherine, it's a shame that people have to question you or side eye if you say you don't drink or no thanks, right? Like there can be a multitude of reasons why we're choosing not to drink. And is it anybody else's business? No, but I will reiterate, it is very confronting for people when you make a choice for yourself and you become a mirror for them a lot of stuff can come up. And I've experienced this firsthand with a couple of my closest relationships. When I doubled down on my decision to stop drinking, it really amplified their own problematic relationship with alcohol. That is for them to work through and to resolve if they choose to. But it really highlighted for them um, that maybe there was a problem for them. And so, still love there, still a lot of good, happy memories, but I have to do, what's right for me. Yeah. Also because we're pregnant, right? Hello. Like again, why is that anybody's business? And I love mocktails as an alternative. Yep. Flavored seltzers. Yeah, I'm a big fan. This is great. And again, other people's opinions. Everybody's always going to have an opinion about the choices that we make for our lives and our bodies. And we're going to talk here next about some of the unintended, unexpected upside that we can experience when we make this choice. But one of the biggest things is showing up differently is hard for other people to get their arms around. They are accustomed to us being one way, and for a lot of reasons, when we change the way we're showing up, that can be really tricky for them. So, one of the things that comes up, and this wasn't my experience, I am peeking at my watch. I am partnered now. My partner is also sober, and we met on a dating app a couple years ago. We met on Tinder, and Tinder allows you to choose your choose your relationship with alcohol, I guess. Like I'm an everyday drinker, I'm a celebratory drinker, um, or I'm sober or sober curious. And so at the time I put sober curious, he put, I think the same thing and we matched. But when I made the decision to stop drinking, I wasn't in a relationship. And I did think very hard about what does this signal to a potential partner about who I am, what judgments are they making? And it turned out to be a good thing. I'll also share maybe TMI, but at 45, I realized how much alcohol had played a part in all of my romantic relationships, going all the way back to college and even high school, that there was usually alcohol involved in either the awkward first date or the awkward first kiss or beyond. And really understanding and learning to be centered and present with myself and with my partner for all of the awkward was a huge lesson for me and really helped to bolster our connection as a couple in those earliest days. But a lot of us are partnered. Many of us have been in long-term relationships, either married or partnered. And so this idea that we've maybe behaved a certain way as a couple, maybe we go out every Friday for a beer after work and a pizza. Maybe we do yard work on Saturday and then we celebrate with a cold one. What happens when you decide that you don't want to participate anymore, but maybe your partner still does? And I don't have any great answers to this sort of conundrum, only to honor that it's a thing, that when we upset the dynamic in any of our relationships, it can often be hard. I hope that you have a supportive partner if that's the case for you. And I'm hearing more and more stories about maybe one person that identified as having a problematic relationship with alcohol, and then they decide to maybe curb or stop their drinking, and then the other partner does as well in solidarity. Or maybe they set some ground rules around alcohol in the home, or alcohol as part of their social life. And so maybe the partner will participate when they're out with friends, but when it comes to the one-on-one time that they have with their partner, maybe they stop. And I think that's really beautiful, and it's really situational, and it's also really hard. I've also heard stories about relationships ending because all of a sudden, going back to that, you used to be fun, you used to be spontaneous, you used to be outgoing, and maybe alcohol was a mask, or alcohol was the vehicle that made us seem that way. And when we take that away, that perception can change. So hard stuff here. And I really want to honor that. I don't ask on purpose where you are on your journey. I love that a lot of you have come forward and shared. And to be honest, the more I talk about this topic, the more common that is from my seat over here. A lot of us who have done the work, if you will, and are on our journey feel really good about the decisions that we're making. And so there's an inclination to share. But if you're not there yet, and you might not be, you might not even be here with us live, maybe you're listening to the recording, it's a process. And so you're going to think about all of the things that I've just talked about here, and also other things that we've not talked about, because your experience is going to be different than mine. And you may never arrive at the point where you want to make a different choice. And this may validate that you're making the right choice for you, but we are all at different points on our journey. I'm going to pause and we're going to read through some of the great comments here. Molly has validated that sober dating world is great. Honestly, I agree with you. Thank you for the +1 to that comment. Pleasantly surprised. And then we've got a comment here about the double standard between women and men in the insurance world. That's frustrating. Women will always be judged for doing the exact same thing as the men. I'll never forget when I was told it's just the way it is. It won't change. Men will always get a pass and you'll always be judged. So you're better off not drinking if you don't want to be judged, because then they won't have anything to talk about and you have to accept that. I get it, right? I have been very early in my career. I've stayed at the bar too long. I have seen things and been part of things that I regret that I saw and was part of. I've been on the receiving end of inappropriateness, and I wish that little young career Meg would have made a different choice. I know that I would now, and I think this brings up an interesting point. And I know when Elaine introduced me to you all, she mentioned the podcast I host, and we've done a couple episodes on the topic of sobriety. But I did interview my sobriety coach, Katie Tomaszewski, and she came on and we had a great conversation. And one of the things that we talked about is, wouldn't it be cool if now those of us that are on this journey and are here, if we could become sort of that safe haven for a younger gal that's still figuring this out? And is it our place to kind of pull her aside and say, like, hey, let's think about what we're doing here. Let's think about maybe another choice, or let's kind of run down where this has the potential to go. Is that our responsibility? Are we overstepping? Maybe. But nobody was doing that. Trust me, nobody was doing that 26 years ago when I was just starting out. And I think in many ways we are modeling a different option. You can be successful, and that's a funny word. Define that however you will. We can be impactful. We can be powerful. We can be quote unquote executive level and also not participate. And that is a tough pill for other people to swallow, and it might come with some other consequences for us. But I do think that's a little bit of maybe the responsibility or the opportunity that we have as women who are figuring this out, to make sure that other gals who are coming up in the industry know that they can make a different choice, and that if they do see negative consequences on one side, that we can be supportive and uplifting on the other. And I don't want to sugarcoat. I don't want to be Pollyanna. Your point is so valid. There is absolutely a double standard, and I see it and I've experienced it. But at the same time, we also deserve to live a life that's in alignment with our values and how we want to be showing up in our bodies and our nervous systems and the words that we choose to use. And I think we're seeing more and more of that being celebrated in our industry. And so, yeah, this brings up a lot. There's a lot of layers to the conversation here. So in the last little bit that we have here, and again, thank you for chiming in the chat. Y'all are really wonderful. I want to talk about what can happen when we choose to make a different choice. And this is not where I turn on the, I am the poster child for sobriety. I've shared with you, it's been messy, and there's definitely been some downsides, but the upsides that I didn't really anticipate are where I want to go next. And if you've experienced this, or you have feelings or thoughts about this or curiosity, join me in the chat. But I did mention kind of first and foremost that I met my now partner, and we're figuring it out. love in midlife is no joke, but we are figuring it out. And I don't know that I do know that I wouldn't have been able to welcome a relationship like that into my life pre my decision to stop drinking. The self advocacy that I've learned is a huge part of this. The willingness to go to the happy hour and stand there without a drink in my hand and be nervous and want to barf and feel my pits starting to sweat and wanting to run for the closest exit, but yet standing there and knowing that I deserve to be there and that I need to be there. I want to be there, even if it's uncomfortable for me and uncomfortable for the people around me, has really taught me to stand in that truth and to really double down on knowing what's right for me and that self advocacy. What that leads to is a confidence boost, believe it or not. It's wild how you can take something away from your life, and yet there can be positive consequences. And so the ability to say clearly that this is the right choice for me, and I know that, I believe in that. And then confidence is a muscle. I say this all the time, and it creates a ripple effect. It's amazing what being willing to advocate for myself in situations like this has taught me about advocacy in my business and in other personal relationships that maybe needed a little bit of work. But we have also mentioned some of the physical upsides, and I've got a lot working against me right now in this perimenopause thing. But knowing that that my anxiety is improving, knowing that my sleep quality is better, knowing that I'm choosing, just fundamentally calories in, calories out, right? That I'm choosing to use those calories in different ways and for things that bring me, different kinds of fulfillment and pleasure. And so there are a lot of reasons why people are choosing this path, and they're all valid. And again, at the risk of sounding like I have it all figured out or like I have all the magical answers and it's just a matter of, saying no, I also want to honor that it's not that easy. And my decision was pretty much cold turkey. I don't have cravings. I don't long for, the good old days in that sense. I like how I feel, and that's enough motivation for me to keep going. But alcohol is addictive and it can have its grip on us, and that's very real. We've talked a little bit about mocktails in the chat. Mocktails are a great alternative. I don't always love them because back to the calories thing, like they tend to be loaded with sugar. And why do they still cost as much as an alcoholic beverage? I guess I'd rather have dessert or something, I think. But I do know that if I want to have that relief of, something cold and crisp on a hot summer day, that I can grab a non-alcoholic beer and get that satisfaction or feel that level of participation. So yes, there's so many layers here. I want to leave you with a couple ideas, and these are resources that I found helpful to me on my journey and still do. This is not an endorsement. These people, for the most part, don't know I exist or that I'm sharing these things with you. But if you're looking for a place to start, across the top are two different podcasts that I love. The first one is the Hello Someday podcast, and Casey is the host, and she is super matter of fact. And she was a bottle of wine a night drinker and went through periods of sobriety. And if you identify with the setting limitations, I'm not going to drink during the week, or I'm only going to drink on the weekends. That was Casey's experience. And she brings on experts and then tells her own story in ways that I really enjoy. I love a good storytelling format. And the next one, the Sober Motivation podcast. I was on this podcast. I was super thrilled to be able to be a guest, and I tell my whole sobriety story there. But Brad McLeod was more drug addiction rather than alcohol dependence, and actually lives in Canada. He's not eligible to live in America anymore based on some of his criminal background, unfortunately, but he's become a huge ambassador and a voice for people who want to share their stories in sobriety. And what I love in particular about Brad is that he was willing to share mine, even though I didn't identify as necessarily a problematic drinker, but more of this kind of gray area concept. And then down the bottom here, 3 books that I love. I mentioned The Anatomy of Anxiety. This is not a book about alcohol. It's a book about our nervous system and our body's response to anxiousness. There is a component that's tied to alcohol. And so I found that really informative. Similar, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Just a great, fascinating, eye-opening, jarring at times read about the human body and what's going on there physiologically for us. And then Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. Highly, highly recommend. I love the audiobook in particular. And I say with like all sincerity, my head exploded multiple times in this book. She speaks from the first person and shared some things that really helped me to look at my relationship with alcohol through a different lens. So, good place to start. If you've got ideas, throw them in the chat. I'm always learning. Always want to know what everybody else is tuning into. Got a couple more comments before we say farewell here. Molly says that it's empowering. It took some time under her belt before putting herself in those situations, but so much clarity and empowerment has come from your journey. Yes, +1 to that comment. Those unexpected, unintended consequences can be good ones. And the knowing who you are and being okay with kind of version 2.0 and whatever that might bring. And candidly, it's brought me here to this moment. I've always questioned why we drink like we do in the insurance industry, even though I participated in it, and never thought I would see the day, frankly, where we would have an open conversation about some of the shenanigans and some of the decisions that are happening all around us that in many ways we're participating in or adjacent to. And so really cool moment in time to be able to have a conversation like this. And I'm on LinkedIn. Most of you have connected with me already there, but that's the QR code to take you right to my profile. And I just echo what Elaine said here in the beginning. It's brave to talk about topics like this, and I'm grateful that they're willing to invite me on to do it. This ends a year-long engagement that we've had, all sorts of topics. We've talked about success and burnout and redefining our relationships with the people around us, with ourselves. We talked about caregiving, our relationship with risk and sobriety. I mean, there's so much goodness here that we've achieved over the last year together, and it's been my total pleasure to be with you. So thank you everybody for being here and being so attentive and hanging with me in the chat. And I hope to see you along the way. And Elaine, I will kick it back over to you.
Might help if I unmute myself. Meg, thank you for an amazing discussion. I hope everyone that participated took a lot of stuff, good stuff away from this conversation, and just kudos to everyone who participated. And as for our webinar series, I think it was also a wonderful way to wrap things up. And we will just, again, hope that we see all of you come back in 2026 for the programs. Keep an eye out for that promotion. The marketing that should start by the end of the year, very beginning of 2026. And with that said, I want everyone to take care. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but have an amazing holiday season too. I mean, Thanksgiving is around the corner. Christmas will be here before we know it. And then we're in 2026 and ready to do it all over again. So appreciate our women's community. And that's it. It's a wrap. Thank you so much, folks. All right, I'm going to, there we go.